Prabhu kotha gela acharya Heno Prabhu kotha gela acharya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Thank you everybody for coming to honor His Grace Goursundar Prabhu, one of Srila Prabhupada's earliest disciples. And thank you, Mitra Sena Prabhu, for singing and bringing us into a calm, peaceful atmosphere of honoring Goursundar Prabhu. So, Gaya, Goursundar's wife, yes. We're going to chant first. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so for everybody's awareness, the invocation prayers were actually assembled by Goursundar Prabhu on Prabhupada's request, the Mangalacharan that we often sing in those prayers. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, if everybody could just sit down now, and we can look at all the pictures later. So, Gaya, Goursundar's wife of 45 years, who's missing him dearly, has asked that we have several speakers elsewhere who are from the early days, and they will be coming in through Zoom. So we have chronological lineup basically, except for two people, Jadharani and Achutananda Prabhu, they'll come later because they have other engagement. But I'm going to ask Her Grace Gaya Dasi to speak first about her glorious husband, and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank everybody for coming. Hare Krishna. Do I sit up there? Yes, yes.
I'm just going to read a few notes so that I don't get lost here and ramble on. Sounds okay? All right. My husband, Goursundar Das, was a teacher, a musician, an artist, a philosopher, and also a wannabe stand-up comic, okay? Prabhupada once said to him that this place was no place for a gentleman. And he told me that many times, and Goursundar was a gentleman. He was a gentleman that in all the years that we were together, when we didn't have a temple or association, we did our bhakti yoga, we did service to children, and I'm going to go through chronologically now. Madhua will do some of the earlier days, but I'm going to start in after we left the temple. But first, in 1977, we had a farm in Kalapa, and the farm was under Prabhupada. We were blessed by Prabhupada. And we had kirtans, and we had gardens, and it was wonderful by Honoka. So we were there for about 11 years. And then in 1977, as Madhua reminded me, Upendra sent Goursundar letter that Prabhupada was failing and to come. At that time, we did have Radha Krishna deities, and we worshipped Radha Krishna deities, we were pujaris, and Goursundar went to India and met with Prabhupada. And under Prabhupada's direction, all of us got initiated in the summer of 1977. Goursundar did that for us. We never asked, we were just there, and he did that for us. And so we were initiated by Goursundar then. And around the room, as you see, there's 12 posters, and the posters depict Goursundar's life, from birth, pretty much, to maybe a month ago, literally. So after, we can explain some of the pictures. And so everything I'm going to talk about now is in also picture form. So Goursundar, being an artist, would really like that. And then the other people will color in the other parts that are missing after I speak. All right. He got the letter to India and secured initiation. In 1984, Goursundar, we closed our farm in Kalapa and went back to college. We needed to make a living. And both of us went to University of Hilo and pursued degrees. Goursundar then finished his art degree, got a history degree, got a political science degree, and a minor in English and philosophy. At that point, we left when we finished our bachelor degrees. We went to graduate school in Manoa, University of Hawaii in Manoa, and I was finishing my degree, and he was working on a philosophy degree at that point. We were also had to make a living. He was substitute teaching, and I was teaching also at, he was substitute teaching at Waianae High School, which is not Punahou, I'll tell you that. Anyone knows Hawaii, okay. So then what happened was Goursundar did that, he worked on his degree, and then the school I was at, Makakilo, I became the guidance counselor, and he was hired as the special ed teacher for children. And he had not had a degree, but he had his bachelor's, and we did that for about a year. Makakilo Elementary School, if you know Hawaii, is not Punahou either, okay? It was a rough school. It was a rough school. He taught, we had first graders to sixth graders with various disabilities, emotionally disturbed, autistic, mentally challenged, and he had a group of boys, and there's pictures up there of his boys. He had them buy baseball gloves. He taught them all how to play baseball. He taught the boys who were very resistant to learning, let's say, how to count. You use blackjack, you know? I mean, he used card games. He used whatever was actually possible. And he had his boys, and he had his whole group. It was like he finally found his calling. He became just thrilled. That's how our service, and as he always reminded me that when Prabhupada first came to New York, Prabhupada would tell him stories, and I actually have this recording, that he went down to the Bowery. And if you know New York City, you go down to the Bowery, and the drunks on the street, the drug addicts, and Prabhupada said, that's who we go to. We go to all of the people that really need us. And so when we started teaching, we did not do the gifted. We did the kids that were the unlovables, the ones that needed us the most. Then in 1991, we moved to the mainland, and we moved to, Goursundar pretty much ran our lives. I'm fine with anything. Where do you want to live? I want to live in Fallon, Nevada, in the middle of the desert. 4,000 feet in the middle of the desert, 3 inches of rain, literally. I mean, maybe 5,000 people. There wasn't even a Walmart there, okay? So we moved to Fallon, Nevada, and there was a Navy Air Force, a Navy station there, with lots of airplanes, so he loved that. He was a military child and loved airplanes, okay? He could tell you walking, he could hear the sound, he could tell you F-15, F-18, A, B, C. He literally could do all that, and it was just a love of his. And as I'm going to backtrack a little, when he was in college, he was in the Texas A&M, and he had 2 appointments to the Air Force Academy. He had perfect scores on his math, and he had 2 years in a row he had, and his stigmatism stopped it. So otherwise, he would have been flying in Vietnam. And so then in Fallon, Goursundara ended up going back to school and getting his teaching certification to teach high school. And that was a 70-mile trip each way. And then he ended up teaching high school in a place called Sparks, Nevada, which was not Punahou either. Very, very, very rough school. Lots of gang members, police there every day. But he did that for a year and taught world history. And he actually did okay in there. It just got too much driving. And we were in Fallon, and I had a developmental kindergarten at the time, and you'll see pictures. And I had lots of autistic kids. I had developmentally delayed kids, just name it, and it was huge. And he would come in and volunteer, and then they ended up hiring him. He would work with the most disabled kids, the ones that did not want to read, the ones that were just ornery. And he used games, computer games, Spider-Man, teaching the alphabet, cheat codes. You had to know the letters to do the cheat codes, right? He had all these kids reading, and it was, he had really developed a technique of getting through to some of the most severely impacted children. A lot of them were abused. And we did that for till 2003. We were there for 12 years. And all through this, literally, Goursundara taught me. He taught me how to write. He actually, all my papers in college, he edited. He developed my master's thesis. I didn't even need anybody, and helped me implement it in Makakilo. And it was always, for him, it was always promoting other people. He wanted to stand back. He never wanted to be GBC. He never wanted to be president. He never wanted any of that. He just said that's how Prabhupada taught him, to serve and help others, help his god brothers and sisters. We moved to Fort Walton Beach in 2003, and that's about 450 miles north of here, in a beautiful area, White Sand Beach. And there was a huge Air Force base there too, Eglin Air Force Base, and so obviously we took kids there all the time. We had an old house, and he did a lot of carpentry, so I renovated an old brick house. And at the time, I was teaching, and he would come into my class. For about 5 years, I taught regular kindergarten with autistic kids, a mixture, being a special ed teacher. So Goursundara came in and taught art every day to the kids. The kids had portfolios. He did cartoons. That's what he would teach the kids and put up on the board, cartoons. And he was able to, and then we had a lot of kids that were busy boys, drug-addicted parents, in jail, a lot of these African-American kids, and those were his boys. And he taught them kickball. And that was social skills. I mean, he had all of these kids playing, and then also he had developed the computer programs, and so he did all of that with the kids. And then in about 2006, 2007, we were doing all of that, and his best friend, his brother, Siddhasarupananda Maharaj, contacted us. We were off the grid. Many people had tried to contact us for many years. And we just did our service. It was just the two of us, very much. And in Fallon, Nevada, we were at the Paiute Shoshone tribe, was part of the city, so we dealt with a lot of the tribal politics and teaching. And anyway, so 2006, he got a letter, and it said, is this, Gary McElroy? And we picked up the letter, and was Siddha, and wanted us to call him. I haven't talked to you in, 30 years. And that started a relationship of Siddha encouraging, you need to go back and do kirtan, you need to do classes. Srila Prabhupada would want you to do all that, you need to do that. Well, I could say I didn't go in that way, but once Siddha got involved, we started doing classes, and it was such a support, not only, just emotionally, physically, monetary, everything. And so we were in constant contact and did all these programs, and for about 10 years. That's why I have some of the letters from the people. And so that went on, and it was wonderful, it was wonderful. We were always, Siddha was so happy, and they were best friends. That was his, it was his godbrother that Prabhupada, Siddha was, he brought me to Srila Prabhupada, and I owe you everything. And so then 2016 is when Goursundar first had started getting ill, hospitals and all that. I won't go into all of that. But so that started, and we never had children of our own. We've had 1,000 children over the years. And we don't really have close family either. So I was pretty much on my own figuring this out. And then my Leela, she was involved, and everybody got involved. This is what you're going to do. I was still working full time. And this is what you're going to do, and we're going to take them to Shands, or we're going to take them to Jacksonville. You're not taking them to any shoddy place here. And that's what happened. And Siddha also had a dream, and he called me. And the dream was that Srila Prabhupada came to him in his dream and said, you will take care of Goursundar. That was the dream.
You take care of Goursundar. Prabhupada told Siddha.
So that started the last 6-7 years, and they directed me. They were this like family, to found a doctor in Shands. Brought him here, and it was funny because we got the diagnosis, some diagnosis that wasn't real. Said, no, now you take him to Houston, now you take him here. We're sending him all over the world, we're going to cure him. And at that time, it was a lot. So we started that was the saga, and Siddha has been there for us every minute of the day, my brother, my god brother, and never a question of anything. And so, and most of you know the rest of the story here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about, we've been here for 3.5 years, and literally Goursundar was not going to move here. We had a house to sell, and he said, I'm not moving there. I'm not going there. And Siddha was on the, no, you're going. You're going to go be around devotees, you're going to go, it doesn't matter who your spiritual, it doesn't matter. You have to be around. Now you were the ones that were giving to other people in Fort Walton Beach, and now you have to go and be around God brothers, God sisters, and because he wasn't listening to me, It's like, we'll just stay here, no. And he was on the phone. I remember an hour conversation. No, you are going there. And and I had to sell the house, and I retired, and said I was right there. If something was wrong, we're getting him there. We are getting him there. And so that was in 2019, and I got here by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, and I literally, because Goursundar was very sick at the time, and he wasn't on the carbidopa, which they give him, and so he was not moving. His motor planning was gone. He couldn't figure out how to get out of the chair. So I had to reteach, and I think, to think back, I was a special ed teacher, I had my master's in special ed. All of this was to bring us to this point so that I could take care of him right to the end. And there was never, I said, see, this is what happens. So anyway, then we've been here 3.5 years, and in the beginning it was, Goursundar encouraged me, even though he needed care, to tutor. We went through all this, got you, at this point, tutor, teach guitar. do whatever. And so for the last 3.5 years, I've had so many kids come through, and he would be in the bedroom, and that was the only time he didn't holler, okay, where are you? I had a bell, because he knew with the kids it was the most important thing, right to the end, to do that. And then I'm just going to just go through the last couple of months. Goursundar started having dreams. He was in and out of consciousness. He actually, in all of this, was pretty healthy. His blood work was great. And I'm just going to fast forward. His hospice came that Tuesday, past Friday. No sign of any organ breakdown. He was perfectly healthy. Nothing. He decided to leave, okay? He lost his ability to play the guitar. He lost his ability to read. His eyes weren't focusing. He lost his ability to do any artwork. You know, he was walking a little. He lost his ability to speak in a complete grammatical correct sentence, which killed him, with your subject and verb agreeing, okay? None of this chop-chop. That's probably one of the worst things, not to speak in complete sentences. And I know it sounds a little bit, but that was how he was. So then he started having these otherworldly dreams, and then he would walk around the house, and I thought I was going, I got to get out of this place. And I'm going, if it's the last thing we ever do, constantly, you know, it's not funny. I really got to get out of this place. So it was constant for a couple of months. You know, I need to go back home. And I'm thinking, Fort Welton Beach, we sold the. No, he's been saying it to me for months. Whoever thought of this disease really was not thinking, okay, that I had to have this disease. He was not happy with it, you know, as much as I tried. But so just for the last week or so, last couple of weeks, he just started having the in and out dreams. He would wake up in the middle of the night, and this was probably about 2-3 weeks ago, I think, that I called you. And he woke up in the middle of the night. And I've had Prabhupada in the background chanting, but see, I told him, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Hospice says there's no problems, okay? He woke up in the middle of the night and just woke me and said, do you see the ornate door? Ornate. He used the word ornate. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, you know, I just kind of go along. He said, Prabhupada's there and Chaitanya's there. And I said, really? And he said, yes. And he started hollering. I mean, he went on. I fell asleep. And just, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, and knocking at the door, and Chaitanya, they were coming for him. And I didn't realize how auspicious this was until after the fact, as I keep telling people the story. And I said, and then he started having some other dreams. In the last week, he didn't want to eat, but I wasn't accepting that because he was going to get better, okay? So we had ice cream. He didn't stop eating. He didn't stop drinking. I mean, I had every flavor of ice cream in that refrigerator. So he did eat ice cream. He ate kefir, protein shakes. I mean, I did it to make me happy. He was still taking his pills up to the last minute. You know, I did not stop anything. He had, hospice said, nothing's wrong. And he chose. He had it with this body. You know, he had it with this body. And about a few days before, he had a dream with Siddha, okay? And he said, Siddha was in the dream, and we were doing all this stuff. And then I had said to him, you know, you still have stuff to do on this earth. You still have stuff to do. He goes, oh my God, I got to get in that pool one more time for Siddha. That's what he said. And it was, all right, no, there might be other stuff. And so the night, I wasn't doing the 12 tilaks until Samapriya got on me. You got to do all 12, and I was like doing the, so I printed it out, and you know, I was just putting tilak on his head, and so the night before he passed, I put the tilak on him, the 12 places, and figuring it out, and he's just like, my God, I'm going to die before you finish already. I was like, just wait. Samapriya said I had to do this. You know? And then the next morning he says, I feel better. I'm going to do my Russian exercises with Radha Krishna. Don't ask Russian exercises. And I got him all dressed. He had his guitar T-shirt on and sitting up in the chair, and combed his hair. You know, he had the new hairstyle. And then he's like, what do I have to do to get a drink of water around here, okay? It's like, okay, you know, Prabhu, I'm your servant, right? Went and got him some water, and he's just sitting there, and all of a sudden, I mean, this is exactly, he shook his hands like this, put his head back, opened his mouth, eyes rolled to the top of his head, shook like this, and then it was like Krishna came down and closed his eyes, and he had the most beautiful, peaceful look on his face. And I just said, Hare Krishna. The rest of the story you know, I didn't accept it, right? And that was it. And then he left, but he chose to leave because physically there was no shutdown. No. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for filling us in on the gaps, you know, the interim time. Everybody knows about, everybody in ISKCON knows, oh, in the early days, Goursundar, Govinda dasi, Prabhupada's servants traveling around. And I don't know if people know, but there is one of the signboards over there is artwork from the first edition of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And
copies of the original?
Yeah, copies of the original artwork from that first Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, including the acknowledgements page where Prabhupada thanks the different devotees that helped him. And I would like to thank Gary McElroy, Goursundar Das, Adhikari, you know, and his good wife, and then wife, Govinda dasi, for the artwork. So all that, the artwork itself, beautiful black and white drawings, I remember from my first teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and so, but all these years, people in ISKCON haven't known where is Goursundar. So Gaya was not only his constant companion during those years, but I really appreciate hearing from her what he had been up to, and especially the part about speaking to the people that had a hard time. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's like he came to deliver the most fallen first. So Goursundar, they were following, you know, I never heard that before, that Prabhupada told him, you know, these are the people, the Bowery type people that we want to reach out to. We don't want to leave anyone out. So, did she make it? Is she there? Govinda dasi is lined up to be the next speaker through Zoom.
According to her, but she's not figuring out how to get on.
Oh, okay. So we won't be able to go in exact time because Govinda dasi, but yeah, we'll let Turiya Prabhu. Yeah, so one of the very, very early disciples of Srila Prabhupada is Turiya, and he's here to tell his own memories of Goursundar Prabhu. And except for Gaya, we're asking everybody to keep their talk to, 5 or 6 minutes.
I brought 2 letters just from Srila Prabhupada to Goursundar in the early days. The first one is June 2nd, 1969. I met Goursundar in May of 1969. I had traveled from Hollywood, Florida, where I lived and grew up, crossed to Hawaii. The only reason I went to Hawaii was a bandmate of mine. He had, I was in a band, rock and roll band, and we were playing regularly, but there was a break. And he was a surfer, and he had been to Hawaii. He said, let's go to Hawaii. We can bring our equipment and everything and find some gigs there. So we went to Hawaii. I had no plans to go to Hawaii. But when we arrived there, we went to a concert hall, and the devotees were chanting outside. My ears picked up, what is that? And I received a card, chant this Hare Krishna mantra and make your life sublime. So, okay, I started that. Wherever I went, I was chanting, walking like this. But at that time I met Goursundar, and when he learned that I also played guitar, he was very, very happy and wanted to establish a relationship. And so he asked me if I would go with him to the University of Hawaii, and they would have a kirtan. He would play guitar, I would play guitar like that. So, okay, that was our first engagement. You'll see some pictures here. Goursundar, I think you can say he trained me from the beginning. Coming from a military background, he knew how to train us. Anyone who was there in the early days knew that he was the commander-in-chief there. It was a boot camp, everyone agrees that it was there at the time. But in one sense, he also gave me responsibility to take on my own. When Srila joined, he sent me to Maui to take over the Maui temple there. I hadn't been a temple president, but he said, you go and do that. He wanted to open up the the island of Hawaii. He said, you go to Hawaii. I went on my own as a brahmachari, just kirtan in the street and meeting people, and he said, you put on the Govardhan Puja festival there, and we'll come. So I was given the responsibility. I met some people from the Ananda Yoga Society. They welcomed me, and I taught them about Krishna. After the festival, Goursundar came, Srila came, others came, and the festival was such a success, and that we had a group of devotees that he could take back with him, and that was really nice. So he gave me that kind of responsibility. The first responsibility when I decided, okay, I'm going to live with you, you're nice people. He would come to my house and visit and play guitar. Okay, I like these guys. And I was interested in spiritual life. I started reading things like Yogananda and so forth. I became vegetarian. So everything changed when I went to Hawaii. Everything. Completely spiritual turnaround from my mundane music business here. So first thing he did was tell me to revamp the chicken coop, and this would become the brahmachari quarters. I don't know if I can keep this down to 5 minutes, but I have two, So, after meeting Goursundar in May and moving into the temple, well, it wasn't a temple, it was a house. We lived on I lived with Goursundar in three different locations before we got the McKinley Street Temple. It was just the real budding of the time that started to develop. I lived in a house, and he asked me to revamp the chicken coop, make it into a brahmachari quarter. It meant where I would stay. Then we had to move from there. We went to the North Shore. Then we decided to move into the university area. And we rented a house there until McKinley Street was. And there were 5 of us at that time. But I'll read. At first, this is the first letter before I was even initiated. My dear Goursundar, please accept my blessings. I thank you very much for your letter dated May 29th, 1969. And I have carefully noted the contents. I am very glad to learn that you are seriously looking for some ashram sites on the Hawaiian Islands. He goes on to say that find a nice site and other places near there where there are many boys and girls. And if you simply follow the procedures, then your success is automatically there. I am pleased to note that there is one boy named Tony, that was my childhood name, who had become attracted to our movement and wishes to be initiated. He may send me his beads immediately. Please take nice care of him, because there are so many good souls who we must inform of this most important philosophy. And when another man is sent by Krishna to help us, it is our duty to help him understand Krishna consciousness as far as possible. Then in November of the same year, 1969, my dear Goursundar, please accept my blessings. I thank you very much for your letter dated October 23rd, 1969. Both you and Govinda Dasi, assisted by Jayashree, Turiya Das, and Balabhadra, are all doing very nicely and entirely to my satisfaction. So I was so moved that Prabhupada remembered me and knew my name, and I was associated with these wonderful devotees. Goursundar, who had been trained up by Prabhupada directly, I was under his care. I learned cooking also from Govinda Dasi, who was cooking for Prabhupada. It was like the direct parampara link. So he says, regarding the songs you have written, yes, you may send them for Mukunda to consider for further recordings. I expect to visit Hawaii when I go to Japan. And surely at that time, it will not be difficult. But always remember that I am always with you. As you are always thinking of me, I am always thinking of you also. Although physically we are not together, we are not separated spiritually. So we should be concerned with this spiritual connection. And I was thinking also, in this time of loss, we have that spiritual connection also. I was thinking of you also, Gaya, that he is with us. That spiritual connection that we had with him is everlasting. Our God brothers, our God sisters, who actually had an impact in our life, is something that will never fade. Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari.
Thank you so much, Turiya Prabhu. It's really nice to hear from the early devotees. So in the letter that Turiya Prabhu read, one of the devotees that was in the temple with them at the time was Jayashree, and she's served here sometimes, and but she's in New Vrindavan and wanted to come through Zoom, but somehow she's not able. So I have a letter she wrote, and I'm going to sit in the place that she would sit in if she were here and read what Jayashree wrote, which is somewhere on my phone. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, so this is Jayashree speaking about Goursundar Prabhu. I moved into the first Hawaii temple in the spring of 1969. At that time, Goursundar Prabhu was the temple president, and he was also the person who established the temple in Hawaii. He was a quiet and reserved gentleman who, over the years, was our main teacher. He was very scholarly and had at least one book that had belonged to Srila Prabhupada. So we learned a lot of things from him that were not available to other devotees. In other temples, because of the time, there were no books except a small copy of Bhagavad Gita and a few Back to Godhead magazines. Many of us are indebted to him for the spiritual foundation that he set into place for us. He will be fondly remembered by many for his love and service to our beloved spiritual master. We know that Srila Prabhupada loved him very much, and we witnessed how much care Srila Prabhupada took for the spiritual well-being of his beloved son, Goursundar. All glories to his service to Guru and Krishna. Jai Shri. Oh, first? Or? Yeah. Oh, that's what you said. Okay. So because we're trying to stay chronological, we have a Zoom presence of Taran Krishna from, he's in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
Santa Cruz.
Okay, you're on.
There's going to be an echo here, I believe, but I'm Taran Kanti, and I joined the Honolulu Temple in 1970, the spring of 1970, after being given a Sri Sopanishad by the Sankirtan party down in Waikiki, and climbing up into a banyan tree that night and spending all night in the banyan tree praying, what should I do? Goursundar was so encouraging and so welcoming and so happy to have people wanting to join. And like Jayashri mentioned, his classes were absolutely astounding. I was raised in a very Catholic family, so many of the ideas that were expounded on were sort of put in seed when I was growing up. But when I heard from Srila Prabhupada and when I heard from Goursundar what Srila Prabhupada was teaching, I realized that they were only seed, but that this was the mature fruit. This was really where it was coming from. And Goursundar gave me an opportunity to do so many different things. He was trying to hold a temple together in Honolulu with a burgeoning, growing group of brahmacharis and brahmacharinis. And it couldn't have been easy to do all of that. And yet he persevered through it all. And I can remember just absolutely being in bliss in his classes, listening. I can remember being challenged by him to, see who could do the least amount of sleep and chant the most amount of rounds, and trying to get by on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, with the enticement that if you do, this was when Krishna books were being published, that you'll get a copy of the Krishna books. And I can remember a result of that I fell asleep giving a class one day, just fell flat forward onto the floor because I was so sleep deprived. But Goursundar held it all together for us, and I owe him a deep, deep debt of gratitude. I had, according to Gaya, one of the last full conversations with Goursundar, and we were talking about what Gaya mentioned when he was at University of Hawaii getting his degrees, and how he was kicked out of a class because he was challenging his philosophy professor for asking the wrong question. And that was really kind of who Goursundar was. He was very precise about his understanding and the way he wanted to communicate his understanding of Srila Prabhupada's message and what the right message would be. And so I just want to offer my obeisances to Goursundar and to all of you for making such a wonderful departure for him. He was a very, very special devotee, and from all the pictures that we've been able to see in the early days with Srila Prabhupada, you can see how absolutely devoted to Srila Prabhupada he was. And if we can all be that devoted, we will all be able to join him back home and celebrate like there is no tomorrow, because there will not be no tomorrow. It'll all be right now. Hare Krishna.
No green light comes on. So,
Kusha's on.
yeah. So we have 2 more people through Zoom, and then Madhuha Prabhu, who's here. So Kusha first, followed by Brishni, both of whom are present through technological wonders.
So is it my turn? Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
All right. Hello, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Unlike Terry Das, I was not so eager. I was a rather reluctant joiner of the Hare Krishna family there. But I'd just like to read something. Dear friends and fellow celebrants of the life of Goursundar Das, my name is Brishni Das, and I was blessed with the good fortune of knowing and living with Goursundar many, many years ago at the McKinley Street Temple in Honolulu. I was a graduate student in sculpture at the time, and Goursundar approached me for some help to make the Panchatattva deities so that Srila Prabhupada would come to Honolulu and install them. I found him to be a very intense and determined fellow, and coming from a Jewish background, who was at that time planning to go to Israel to find some roots and community, I promptly told Goursundar that he was engaged in idolatry. He was asking me to create false idols and graven images. That did not deter him from his mission. He must have sensed my ambivalence about life at that time. And did I already remark on how persistent he was? I did find the project intriguing and had the skills and the resources to do what was requested. In my arrogance, I also had the need to show this guy what I was capable of. Having just graduated and as the University of Hawaii Sculpture Studio Tech, I had time on my hands and agreed to help. I was, of course, invited to the temple to experience the Sunday feast and Goursundar's lectures. I was already both a vegetarian and a dysfunctional hypoglycemic addicted to sugar, so I fit right in at the feasts, surrounded by other brahmacharis with similar eating disorders. At the time, it was something of a homecoming. Goursundar's lectures were brilliant and convincing, and I considered him to be one of my teachers on my spiritual path, offering me a deeper understanding of my being a spirit soul that I was earlier introduced to via Bhagavad Gita, fasting, other spiritual literatures, and a variety of psychedelic substances. Through him and the artistic service he offered me, I entered a highly creative and purposeful period of sculptural expression. I also found some peace and fulfillment and occasional ecstasy in the kirtans he led with electric guitar. Having little rhythm myself, I deeply appreciated and envied the way he played the mridanga. Goursundar was an inclusive and accepting soul, a man who saw the inherent goodness of others and who never pushed any philosophy or path on others. Unlike many in the Krishna movement, he had no political aspirations other than the service he was given by Srila Prabhupada. When things got really confusing with Prabhupada's departure, he took a path of reason, humility, and he kept his own counsel. The highest compliment a man can receive in the Jewish tradition is to be a mensch. Goursundar was a mensch, and it was an honor to know him, an honor to be given the opportunity to see and be with him again after so many years, an honor to massage his feet and to occasionally make him laugh at a time when his physical troubles were so intense. I also thank Gaya for allowing me that opportunity. Dear Goursundar, I'm so glad your bodily tribulations are over, and I wish you the best on your continued journey. Perhaps we will meet again in another time and in another place.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brishni Prabhu. That was really beautiful and funny. We all, I'm a little hypoglycemic too, so it's nice to meet a fellow sufferer.
There are many other funny stories, but I won't share them with you right now.
Damodar? Okay, so Madhuha Prabhu is here, and so he's going to come. He was also on the Kalapa? Kalapa. Okay.
Hare Krishna. I moved into the temple in 1972, a week or so before Prabhupada installed Panchatattva, and others spoke about McKinley Street, so I just want to, one of Goursundar's qualities, he was very grave, very heavy, classes that were very deep, And I remember sitting in one class, he was on one side of the room, and the class happened right after a kirtan with a guitar and bass and several other instruments. Everyone was sitting in the class very quietly, and all of a sudden an explosion went off. Somebody had put a M80 or some, ash can, firework, inside the temple mailbox at McKinley Street. And everyone in the temple just jumped up, what happened, what happened? Goursundar just sat there. He was very, he wasn't easily disturbed like most of the rest of us were easily disturbed. Anyway, that was one thing about Honolulu. And someone mentioned how it was like, Goursundar was like running a boot camp. Because in McKinley Street there was a little shed behind the temple. You have to walk up a hill, and all the brahmacharis took showers there. They were sleeping on the floor, in the back of trucks, underneath cars. But for showers, everybody had to walk up the hill, go outside, and you had a hose to take your shower. And it was like that, and just to skip forward a few years, I was mostly on the first farm on the Big Island, Ocala, and Goursundar, he just by what he had us do, he kind of taught me that a devotee always is willing and prepared to do the needful. A devotee never gives up. And one time he gave us a project. There was a farmhouse on that Ocala farm, and he said, we have to make it bigger. So I was thinking, no, we're going to put an extension on it. And he said, no, we're going to go down. We're going to put a basement under the house. And we didn't have any machinery, it was shovels. We dug out underneath the house, like 10 feet of dirt, carried it out, and everyone's thinking, like, is this for real? Did he really just tell us to do that? And like 3 weeks later, it was done. He gave us many projects, and on the Big Island, we would all go on Harinam and Hilo once a week. We would do door-to-door book distribution. And he taught, one time he showed up on the phone, because he spent most of his time in Honolulu. He brought us a big 16 horsepower generator with a welding machine. And he said, you're going to learn how to weld. I said, oh, okay, I can do that, And the next morning, I think it was about 4:15 in the morning, I had just woken up, and there was a pond there. You'd have to run up the hill, dive in the pond. So I'm coming down, putting my dhoti on. He says, go turn on the generator. And I said, oh, okay, we're gonna do some welding now? No, it's for Mangalarti. And so Mangalarti, the conch shell blew, and it, started. He was really into electric kirtan, which, I've also heard from Dasara Sudha told me. There's a quote from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, or was it Bhakti Vinod? Can't remember who, where he says that one should sing songs and glorify the Lord in one's own language and melodies. And and that kind of gave license to Mangalananda and other devotees. If you're already a musician, don't throw that away. Like he didn't tell Arjuna to throw his bow away. So there was musicians in the temple, and Goursundar fully engaged them. And then a few years after Ocala Farm, we were in Kalopa Park, also on the North Shore, Hamakua Coast on the Big Island. And, I remember we had just gotten back from, Gaya mentioned how Goursundar had got a letter, I think it was May or June of '77, a letter from Upendra. And he said to me one day, do you have a passport? I said, no, I didn't even know what a passport was, I had never been anywhere. He said, no, you have to get a passport, we're going to India. And he showed me this letter, Upendra, I believe it was Upendra, was Prabhupada's, one of his servants at the time in Vrindavan. And Upendra had written to him that, Goursundar wants all of his disciples to come to Vrindavan. So Goursundar took a few of us with him. And then I was not initiated at the time, but he spoke to Prabhupada, and he got 4 of us initiated. Myself, Chandi, Gaya, and Veda Vidya. And we got back, and about 6 months after we got back from India, I got this really high fever. So I slept one morning, and he told the other brahmachari there, Veda Vidya, where's Madhuha? Oh, he's sick, he's a trailer, go get him. He can be sick in the temple. You know, it was boot camp. I mean, if you wake up, if you're not dead, you were there every morning and every night. And at first it seems like forceful, but this wasn't his program, it was Prabhupada's program. I mean, practically every initiation letter, Prabhupada said, you know, please see that these devotees rise early, hear the Bhagavatam, chant their japa. So, and the way he dealt with devotees, it's kind of helped me, because he was about 9 years older than me, but it wasn't just 9 years. He was like a father, a mentor, close friend. I mean, he gave us everything. Ultimately, he gave us Prabhupada, and he may have been a little separated from devotees at the time, but I went to visit him in Fort Walton Beach around 2015 or 16, and what's the first thing he did? He said, you just get the harmonium, and I just wanted to do kirtan, but that's what he really loved to do. And back in Kalopa Park, every morning was a Bhagavatam class. He gave pretty much all the classes there, and in the evening was Bhagavad Gita, but I think it was in 75 or 76, as soon as Chaitanya Caritamrta came out, he started reading from Chaitanya Caritamrta. So we went through the whole 17 volumes in maybe 2 years, 2.5. He just went straight through the whole thing. So, Hare Krishna, he was a close friend, and I'm sure he's in a better place now. We're all on the list, we just don't know who's next in line. So you have to remember how a devotee lives, for any devotee. I think it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said the Vaishnava lives forever and the follower lives with him. So we need to remember Srila Prabhupada's instructions, follow them, and his disciples who have encouraged all of us. I mean, everyone has been encouraged by someone in their spiritual life. So we have to remember and be very thankful, full of gratitude for what our God brothers and senior Vaishnavas have helped us. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Madhuha Prabhu. And I also want to thank you. You mentioned the farm on Hilo? Ocala, okay, in Hawaii. So just about a little over 50 years ago, I had heard of Krishna, and the person who told me about Krishna said, I'm going to Hawaii, see you later. And I'm like, don't leave me here. So I went too, and he was a friend. He and I were hitchhiking around, going to the Sunday feast on Hilo and the next Sunday on the Kona side of the Big Island. And we met so somebody at the farm, one of the brahmacharis there, could see that I was, quote, sincere and serious. And they called the then temple president of the whole Hawaiian Islands, Goursundar Prabhu, and they told him about this girl, and he said, tell her to go to Kauai. So when I first heard that Goursundar was here, I thanked him right away, because by his permission, I was able to move into the temple 50 years ago this past Gaur Purnima. Hare Krishna. So we have Sri Giriraj Das on Zoom. We have a couple wonderful old devotees on Zoom.
This is Giriraj. Well, here. These are
Just stand here.
these are devotees that were at Fort Walton Beach that found our temple there. Out of everybody, they found us, the family found us, and you'll see some pictures up there. And they were just a wonderful Indian family, South Indian, and would come to our programs. So he wanted to say something. So he's up on Zoom. They're in India now.
Oh, thank you.
His Grace, Her Grace Gaya Mataji ki jai. His Grace Goursundar Prabhu ki jai. I'm sharing some of the wonderful pastimes with His Grace Goursundar Prabhu. This was in Fort Walton Beach Association. So nice, wonderful association with Gaya Mataji and His Grace Goursundar Prabhu. How I connected? Let me tell my story. Actually, I am a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. During my project work, I came to Pensacola, Florida. There I worked for one company called Navy Federal Credit Union. There was one Prabhupada disciple, Prabhupada's supporter, forgot his name. But actually, it's amazing. It's a miraculous thing to connect with Goursundar Prabhu and Gaya Mataji, because this was in during 2015 June time frame, I think. June time frame. While going through to my office, I suddenly see one van with HK, KK, KK, HH, HR, 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 RR, RR, HH. What does it mean? I was wondering, what is this? HK? HK means Hare Krishna. Then again HK, Hare Krishna. KK, Krishna Krishna. Again KK, Krishna Krishna. HH, Hare Hare. And HR, Hare Rama. HR, Hare Rama. RR, Rama Rama. HH, Hare Hare. So nicely written on the van. I followed. Actually, I crossed my office. I followed that van. I wanted to see who is this lady. I mean, this is a remote location. No devotees, nothing. This is Milton, Florida. And I suddenly, while going to office, suddenly see this van. After lunch break, after going back to office, during that travel, I've seen suddenly this van. I followed this van. Followed. I crossed my office. And suddenly I stopped this Mataji. Who is that Mataji? Mama Beth Mataji, actually. That through that Mataji only I got to know. And there is one more devotee there in the Milton, Florida, Baghdad, Taruni Mataji. That's it. With connection, we got connection, and they only said that there is a Prabhupada disciple. They are living in Fort Walton Beach, and slowly we connected with the Prabhuji's and Mataji, Goursundar Prabhu and Gaya Mataji. So wonderful time I had with Mataji and Prabhuji, lovingly taking care of us, and so much love showing to my kids, Ansini and Brunda, my wife Lavanya. We are very much missing because we travel because of my non-immigrant visa. I used to travel different places for different projects. It was something separated. Recently got to know that Goursundar Prabhu left his body, and I was very much emotional. And before this call also I was remembering and Prabhuji and crying, so nicely. And I love the Mataji nicely taking care of us, so nicely cooking. What is that? Some samosa kind of thing, so nicely made. And Prabhuji also in the part of discussions, kirtans, Advaita Bhavan, in the Fort Walton Beach, every Fridays. Whenever there is a program, we used to come and attend the programs. And I used to play along with Mataji the kanga, the big drums. Mataji liked it much. Oh, you got the tunes, you got these things. And Mataji has given nice gifts to my kids, like guitar. I am remembering, how Krishna connected, how Srila Prabhupada connected me, a remote location through, wonderful devotees here in Fort Walton Beach. You see, everything it works. There is a purpose to meet in our life. All these great souls, there is a purpose. So I am really missing His Grace Goursundar Prabhu, but he's already joined in the spiritual world with Srila Prabhupada, serving Krishna and Radha eternally. He's a wonderful, pure devotee, I can say, as his entire till and last breath was completely in the chanting of the holy names and remembering Krishna always. And Mataji supported so nicely. I really amazed about Her Grace Gaya Mataji. She supported so nicely Prabhuji, that is the exemplary couple. What is the purpose of marriage life? To share each other, care each other, love each other, support each other. I really like the way both of them conduct their life. It's always inspiring for me to take up those learnings. I'm still remembering those Advaita Bhavan, those 420 days. I definitely come to Alachiva, Gaya Mataji. I promise you, definitely I come and see you because I'm right now in Dallas, Texas. Definitely I'll come and meet and I'll spend some time with you. But Krishna, you see, he's already serving there. He is there, wonderful devotee. He's always there with us. Goursundar Prabhu. His grace, Goursundar Prabhu ki jai. Har grace, Gaya Mataji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Hari Premanande Hari Hari. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sri Gaya Prabhu. That was wonderful. And he happened to mention 2 other devotees that were serving in Fort Walton Beach.
There's Kusha.
Okay, so Kusha has Govinda Dasi on her phone, so she will speak next. But then I have 2 offerings from other devotees from Fort Walton Beach.
Yeah. Two devotees, Taruni Mataji and what is that? Mama Beth Mataji. They're wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Oh my Gyana Timandasha. Gyana Jan Salakaya. First, I want to thank Gaya for her devoted care of Goursundar right up until the end of his life. She did a splendid job. I also want to thank our dear friend and god brother, Srila Prabhupada, who helped Goursundar so much in the past few years. And I want to thank the many Alashua devotees for their loving care and support for Gaya and Goursundar. And of course, most of all, my heartfelt thanks to our Hawaii community of devotees who have always been there for him, like Madhuha, Turida, Shaktimati, Kushadevi, Parankanti, and so many others. There's too many to even mention. All of those devotees who loved Goursundar and wanted to help in any way possible. As many of you know, Goursundar and I traveled with Srila Prabhupada for 2 years before ever coming to Hawaii in early 1969. Except for the months he spent in India, we were with him continuously from 1967 to 1969, almost like a family. Then he sent us to Hawaii to open temples. My recently released book, A Place of Sandalwood and Roses, is arriving tomorrow in Alashua, and it describes these early times in the movement and with Srila Prabhupada. If you want a copy of the book, please contact Devaki Dasi, Kusha Devi, Gaya, whoever. There's a lot of people there. Most of you here are those who joined us in Hawaii and helped build up a wonderful network of preaching centers and temples with centers and farms on Maui, Oahu, and the Big Island. Many of you gave your precious years of youth to help in these endeavors. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly for all your wonderful service to Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's mission. We thrived on the loving family atmosphere in those early days, and most of us have never forgotten it. We were and are Srila Prabhupada's children, Srila Prabhupada's family. Now, sadly, it's a different era, and much of that family love and atmosphere is often replaced by an impersonal institution. That's to be expected according to our grandfather, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, since just what happens naturally to the essence of bhakti when confined to an institution. So therefore, we strive to maintain these loving family ties with all of our devotee friends, even nowadays if it's on some social media network. On Goursundar's Bhagavat Sapta Shraddha ceremony began in Vrindavan with 7 days Srimad Bhagavatam reading by Choba Brahmins. This program will continue for 1 month, along with Yamuna Puja, Govardhan Puja, and feeding of sadhus, and feeding of grass to Brijbasi cows. If any one of you is inspired to participate in this program, please contact me. I see it as just one way to give back to someone like Goursundar, who has given so much inspiration on our spiritual journey. Lastly, I want to beg forgiveness of you all for any failings and disappointments as a result of Goursundar and I and our youthful immaturity and lack of experience. We were entrusted with a huge amount of responsibility in our early 20s. And we did not live up to even our own expectations as well as those of others. Please find it within your hearts to forgive us for any wrongs that you suffered.
Thank you.
Dandavat Jai Srila Prabhupada. This has been a great time of introspection and healing and dedication to those very great personalities that have sacrificed their lives so intensely in the service of Srila Prabhupada. People that, like Goursundar, Govinda Dasi, Balabhadra, Jayashri, Tiriyadas, Shaktimati, Taran Kunti, Govardhani. So many devotees who dedicated their lives so intensely to the service of Srila Prabhupada. And we're all going through an awful lot, losing Goursundar, who, yes, he was our commander-in-chief, and it was a boot camp, but his classes, oh my God, he gave the best classes. I have to say, his classes were so divinely inspired that our hearts sang. They sang, yes, 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 yes. Everything Goursundar said in his classes, we answered with the resounding refrain of yes. He was speaking the absolute truth. He was divinely channeling Srila Prabhupada. His classes were so wonderful that all of us signed up to be on board. Boot camp or no boot camp, yes, the brahmacharis would fall asleep paying their obeisances because they were dead tired. Yes, the brahmacharis did so much devotional service. They were so exhausted. Yes, it was the best time of our lives. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Goursundar, and the whole Panchatattva development crew, Vrishni, all of you guys. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for all of your service. Haribo, all glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Kusha. That was wonderful. Yes, it was wonderful. Yes. A resounding yes. And so I think we have Ashram Maharaj next through Zoom.
I guess I was one of the OGs. I met the devotees actually same like Kusha did at a Jimi Hendrix concert in May of 1969. And it was, well, the kirtan got me Goursundar's classes and Srila Prabhupada's books completely changed me. It's hard, I think it's hard for us to communicate how profound Goursundar's classes were. There wasn't anything superficial. He didn't go for easy answers. I remember when I first started coming to Bhagavad Gita classes in the evenings, must have been end of 1969, maybe January of 1970. I asked Goursundar the same question 3 nights in a row. I was trying to get over the setting of the Bhagavad Gita. It was set on a battlefield. I had just gotten out of the Navy. I'd been an intelligence analyst and had been pretty radicalized by my experience in the Navy, trending very strongly pacifist. And I had a hard time dealing with the fact that the Bhagavad Gita was set on a battlefield and that Krishna was exhorting his friend to fight. And Goursundar very patiently answered the same question 3 nights in a row until it started to set in. And this is one thing that I think those of us who were part of the ISKCON Hawaii project from in those early days, for long periods of time in those early days, know about Goursundar that a lot of people might not. His generosity, his kind-heartedness, and his patience. I think I might have been a little intimidated occasionally by Goursundar, but mostly I was warmed. When I moved into the temple, someone mentioned family feeling. This was exactly how I moved into the temple, because there was this family feeling. Kusha, when Kusha and I moved into the temple just before Gaur Purnima in 1970, we made 8 devotees. We were the 7th and 8th devotees. And it was like a family. After the Sunday feast, we would sit out on the front lawn and read Krishna book together and talk together. And it was very much like a family. And Goursundar was like the big brother. And often, because I had to sometimes stay back from some kirtan to take care of Tulsi Devi, we had so many Tulsis growing that I got farther behind taking care of Tulsi every day. But sometimes when Goursundar would see me working in the garden in the middle of the afternoon, when the other devotees would be out on Sankirtan, he'd come out and he'd smile, he'd grin, and he'd say, "Hey, Babru, you want to go to Hanama? You want to go snorkeling at Hanama? Or hey, Babru, you want to go to Sandy's and get some body surfing in?" And so a lot of devotees don't know that side, that warm, open-hearted side of Goursundar. When we lived on the Big Island some years later, and I have one quick story for the historical record. When we lived on the Big Island a couple of years later, sometimes Goursundar would stop by our house on his way back out to Kalopa in the evenings from town, or sometimes I'd be in the Hilo library and I'd feel an arm go around my shoulder, and I'd turn around and I'd look, and there'd be Goursundar there with a big grin. It seemed uncharacteristic because, as some of the devotees have pointed out, he was very grave. He kept his own counsel as much as he could. But at the same time, he was a very kind, warm person. One more thing I just want to mention, I haven't heard this mentioned before. The first Rath Yatra in Hawaii, sometimes we may hear the first Rath Yatra in Hawaii was in Waikiki down Kalakaua Avenue in 1977. But actually the first Rath Yatra in Hawaii, well, there was the Sunshine Festival in 1969, which was a kind of a Rath Yatra, but the first Rath Yatra on wheels, as far as I remember, was in Honoka'a in July or August of 1976, just before my former wife and I moved from the Big Island to Maui. We had a Rath Yatra through Honoka'a town on a flatbed truck, like the first Rath Yatra in San Francisco. And that was Goursundar's project, that first Rath Yatra. So there's no way I can express all the gratitude I feel to Goursundar and to Gaya for reaching out to me when she realized I was out there a few years ago, and drawing me back into their circle. And I was very fortunate that on my way back here to the islands, I was able to stop by and spend a couple of hours with Goursundar and Gaya, and that I felt like that was a great gift. Whatever spiritual assets I have, my association with Srila Prabhupada, my service to Tulsi Devi, my service to all the devotees, that began in 1969 with Goursundar and Govinda dasi. And there's no way I'll ever be able to fully express my appreciation, my gratitude to them. I just have to keep serving. I have no choice. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Asha Maharaj.
On the board there's a picture of the Rath Yatra in Honoka. So a couple of pictures of it.
Oh, sweet. Well, I have the written offerings from the two devotees from Fort Walton Beach.
Jarvani's going to be up soon too.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. So right now I have two offerings from the devotees mentioned by Sri Giriraj Das, that also were coming in Fort Walton Beach when Goursundara and Gaya were doing programs there. So this is from Taruni, aka Teresa, who's watching on Zoom. She says, reflections of gratitude, and starts by Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dear Goursundar and Faith, opened their sweet home, a hidden gem, in the panhandle of Florida to a few locally aspiring devotees on several occasions. The experience was delightful, with Faith's, or Gaya's, committed prasad, arti, and kirtan, and Goursundar's contemplative classes on various devotional topics from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Several local aspiring devotees were moved by the depth and joy they experienced. There was an eclectic offering of kirtan classics with electric guitars, harmoniums, mridangas, kartals, flutes, and acoustic guitars. Faith and Goursundar were the heart of the local bhakti community, and it was a privilege to have their association. Faith, or Gaya, was always warm and welcoming, while Goursundar generously shared Krishna Katha with every aspiring devotee attending their home gatherings. The Panhandle has precious memories of their presence and will forever feel gratitude and remembrance in our true hearts, the mercy that was spread and emanated from these kind souls. Thank you, sweet souls and Srila Prabhupada's devotees. Your seva was generous and warm to all around. Those concentrated precious years were from 2011 to 2018. I offer my humble obeisances. Jai Srila Prabhupada, signed Taruni, Teresa. And this one is from Balaram Das, also from Fort Walton Beach. Goursundar Das has been responsible for my development and deep appreciation for spiritual progress in the movement that our Master Srila Prabhupada brought to the USA. As a direct disciple of Prabhupada, not only did he start temples, but also brought others into the light of our movement. I am one. His extensive knowledge of the scriptures and Puranas associated with devotional aspects of worship enabled him to recommend books that I was able to find and read, therefore having many meaningful discussions with Goursundar Prabhu, and to enabling me to understand the depth and value of the various writings. His devotion to Krishna inspired me to follow his example and to share what I have learned from him with other devotees hungry for this knowledge. I will always be grateful and appreciative for his sharing of valuable knowledge and encouragement to follow in his footsteps. Hare Krishna. Balaram. So next I'd like to call on Radha Krishna Prabhu, who was a caregiver for Goursundar very sweetly during his time here.
Hare Krishna. Dear Goursundar Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Goursundar Prabhu, for your successful journey back home. For most of your life, you were a personality in our worldwide devotee community family, known only to me through your legacy of service to Srila Prabhupada. In the final years of your life, I met you by providence to the guitar, which you excelled at and was your musical instrument by choice. Gaya, your good wife, started to have free guitar lessons during COVID, and my daughter Nikunja attended. Both you and your wife became family to our family. I'd enjoyed your great sense of humor, which was keen and timely. You were kind by nature and always had a smile for me, even at your most trying times. I admired your honor and dignity, facing the greatest challenge of your life in the form of a debilitating disease. You were thoughtful and deep in your spiritual understanding, which showed in your early writings on transcendental subject matters. You allowed me to serve you by helping you try and maintain your body strength through exercise and stretching. You were always a good sport despite your pain. What wonderful mercy you showed me, allowing me to serve such a great soul, which I consider to be a great blessing. What I find interesting about our relationship is that you and Govinda dasi started the Hawaii Yatra to please the desire of Srila Prabhupada. Growing up in Hawaii, I saw the devotees everywhere. I ate prasadam that the devotees distributed. I saw the devotees chanting in Waikiki at night and at the Crater festivals and concerts. Srila Prabhupada's books were distributed, and I acquired a few during your time in Hawaii. Another interesting thing is when I started to attend the Honolulu Temple program about 30 years ago, I met Govinda dasi. It turned out she lived on the east side of Oahu in Hau'ula, and I lived in Punaluu, the next valley over. We became good friends, and I served her in many ways. Years later, my family lived in Louisiana for 2 years, helping her mom as a living caregivers. What a mystical connection to help the two empowered founders of the Hawaii Yatra in their time in need and give me an opportunity to try to repay my debt to you for helping to awaken my soul to Krishna consciousness. Thank you for inviting me into your life and showing me the glories of Srila Prabhupada and the unlimited, inconceivable potency of Sri Krishna. Hare Krishna, your friend and brother, Radha Krishna Das.
Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna Prabhu, thank you. That was so beautiful. And it's true. It's one of those Krishna miracles that you got to take care of both family members from Hawaii. Not yet, I think. She's not there yet. But Mukunda, he's not here anymore. Okay. I would like to just mention that I told that it was Goursundar who gave permission for me to move into the ashram. I didn't really meet him in person until a little over a year ago, but I knew about him, and he actually wrote several books, one of which Prabhupada wrote in the beginning, whoever reads this book can go back to Godhead. It's so very Krishna conscious. One of the books that Goursundar wrote was called Krishnology. It was a small little book. I had a copy. And very high language. Reading Goursundar is almost as difficult as reading Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But I had a little notebook that I kept favorite things in. And so when I did finally meet Goursundar on Christmas Day 2021, at a reading at his house, I was able to tell him and the others that were gathered there that I remember something he wrote. I wrote it in my notebook. He said, we cannot but admit this in our heart of hearts. 1, I exist. 2, I shall continue to exist. 3, I have joy. 4, There is a great entity underlying and maintaining my joy. The list goes on. I think Siddha Sarup and people are getting ready to republish Goursundar's book, so you'll be able to read the long list. But I just found those first 4 statements so potent. I had a little notebook and I read it so many times I knew it again 40-some years later. Okay, so Jadharani, or Shamarani, yeah, she's going to be coming on and...
Well, we could show the video.
Yeah, do we have the video? Yeah. Okay, so Damodar Prabhu is going to play the video, and I think Jadharani will then explain what was happening in Boston, that famous scene of them walking with Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. That was beautiful. So historical. And we do have Jadharani on Zoom now. So, thank you so much, Jadharani Prabhu, for joining us. And Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dhanavad Pranam. Can you hear us? Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Goursundar Prabhu. So my reference, because I would have forgotten everything if I hadn't been writing down over the years and then put it on my memoir book called Art of Spiritual Life. Fortunately, I have that in front of us. So Goursundar and Govinda Dasi, they were the first of Prabhupada's personal servants. Goursundar was the first person who would take Srila Prabhupada's prasadam. Otherwise, before that, before he and Govinda Dasi had all of his high consciousness from previous births, we never took Prabhupada's prasadam. It just, whatever Prabhupada left over on his big, beautiful plate, it just stayed there and got old. So Goursundar taught us by his example of being smart enough to take Srila Prabhupada's Maha Prasadam. And they, the way that we first got to know the word Vyasasana instead of dais was also from Goursundar Prabhu. I have here that he and Govinda used to bring Prabhupada to our Glenville Avenue temple. That is, Prabhupada lived on Chester Street, and Govinda Dasi and Goursundar lived there with him. And then they all either took a taxi or walked the 9 blocks from there to the Glenville Avenue temple. And then we all, as I mentioned, called Prabhupada's Vyasasana a dais at that time. And then Goursundar told me, we don't call it a dais anymore. So I said, well, what do you call it? And he said, it's a Vyasasana. It's the seat that represents Vyasadeva. And then began to explain how the Guru is a manifestation of Krishna's literary incarnation, Sri Vyasadeva. And then, of course, you saw that lovely video of Goursundar and Srila Prabhupada and I, but there's no speech on that video. So how I got to go, because usually it was Govinda Dasi who stayed back and cleaned Prabhupada's quarters while Goursundar would go on the walk with him. And so one day I complained to Prabhupada that what a terrible backache I have, partly because of all the, working on the paintings all the time. So Prabhupada said, if you walk with me, then your backache will get better. So he invited me to come with him and Goursundar. So then the three of us, I'm reading now, the three of us left his house at 6 a.m. Goursundar on Prabhupada's left, me on the right. It was Sunday and the streets were deserted, except for the odd car. And it was early May, but the weather was still very cold and windy. Wearing the long skirt that I'd sewn from the large yellowish cloth that Prabhupada had given me. No, he saw that even in my, even at my initiation, I wore black, tight, long sleeve turtleneck shirt and black, tight dungaree pants. So he gave me a yellow cloth of his, and I sewed that into a skirt, and that was my skirt. So wearing the long skirt that I'd sewn, and that Prabhupada had first personally given me a few days earlier, so I was wearing it at that time. So Prabhupada kept his left hand in his pocket and his right hand sleeve of his checkered coat pulled down to cover his hand, which gracefully held a cane. He would sometimes swing the cane upwards like that as he walked. And then he looked around, ever observant, and he said, so on Sunday, everyone sleeps until noon, 12 noon? And then Goursundar and I nodded. And Goursundar was, him and Pradyumna Prabhu were Prabhupada's very first scholars. And Goursundar was helping him with his translation work, with his Chaitanya Caritamrta. And so one day we were at the darshan with Prabhupada, and Goursundar wasn't there. And that's because he was doing his services with Prabhupada. But then Prabhupada called him, and he said, why weren't you here? Why aren't you here? And Goursundar said, it's because I have some service to do for you. And then Prabhupada said to him, don't you ever think that you're too advanced to hear. So then we walked further, chanting Hare Krishna. Prabhupada looked at both sides of the street and asked, what are they teaching now in school? That there's only one life and that it's meant for sense gratification? So Goursundar and I nodded again. Then, walking with he whom I was certain had come from the transcendental Golokadam, I felt like we were now in a strange alien planet. It's just so amazing when you're with Prabhupada how the earth doesn't seem like home anymore. Or perhaps on a television set. So as we turned left and crossed another street, walking past more wooden houses, trees, and crisscrossed wire fences, these otherwise common streets didn't feel natural at all. Being with Prabhupada felt just right, like being at home. And then at some point I could see that just right in front of Prabhupada, there was some tree obstructing the path. So I became so happy to be able to do my big service of lifting the branch out of his way. And then there was a leaf on the floor, on the ground. So, no, I'm sorry, it got on the ground later. Prabhupada pulled a leaf from the tree and he said, the impersonalists say it's all one, it's all green. But now that I've taken this leaf from the tree, it loses its chlorophyll. And then he threw it on the floor and he said, and no one would touch it, like it was a disgusting thing. So the impersonalists say they're all one, but because they've detached themselves from the service of Krishna, they lose all their value. So Goursundar and I smiled because we knew that that particular leaf had so much value because it was grown by Srila Prabhupada himself. So as we all walked on, I ran back to get the leaf because now it's like a holy memoriam. And then Prabhupada said to us, a devotee thinks, I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine. And then so I said to him, everything is Krishna's. Yes, that I can get. But how can a low person like myself think that Krishna is mine? So Prabhupada said, Krishna is not material. That if he's with one person, that he can't be with another person. So everyone can think that Krishna is mine. And then when we were in the temple, because Prabhupada had recently been ill, but he was so enthusiastic that he motioned to one of the devotees to bring him the mridanga so that he could play it. So he started to play it with Goursundar, who was Prabhupada's servant and always conscious of Prabhupada's health and what he could eat and what he could do. He immediately went over to Prabhupada and took the mridanga and started playing it himself. So that made also Goursundar one of the first mridanga players of Prabhupada's Sangha. The first was Achyutananda, and Goursundar was a close second or third from that. So then he turned the corner, taking a different route than the previous times that we were with him. So then we asked, well, where are you going? He smiled and he said, I don't know, where are you taking me? But he knew exactly everything. So then he led Goursundar and I to a red and white trolley of all things. You know, the trolleys that have the thing up and they're attached to these wires, and they're also, below there's the tracks, and above there's a stick and a wire. So then we all went on the trolley. We went downtown, and Prabhupada took us to the area, the shopping area, that the ship captain of the Jaladuta took him around because Boston, you know, was his first stop. And that reminded us that, you know, Prabhupada sometimes pretends, or he does his Naravat Leela, pretending that he's a human. And so he said that because this trolley, this red trolley, looked a lot like the trolleys of India. He said, when I was a young child and I saw the trolleys move and how they were attached to the wires up there, he said, I thought I could just stand on something with wheels and put a stick up to the wires and I would go, but I didn't go. We laughed. And then we continued to walk through the busy streets of that downtown area, passing certain stores and shops. And then Prabhupada reminisced with us about the captain of the Jaladuta and how he took him on the tour of the shopping place. Then we passed by the Woolworth store, turning left at the corner, were numerous advertising signs and billboards and storefronts. So there was a poster that we had made that is Prabhupada Comes to Boston. And we saw, as we passed, we saw how the devotees had put up those posters. The spiritual master of the holy name is coming to Boston, it said. Bhagavad Gita classes at the Radha Krishna Temple. And I don't know how long to speak, actually. I don't know how long I was scheduled to speak.
Memories, Jadavani. Please keep going.
Okay. Let's see. Shall I tell more about that Boston time when Goursundar was? Okay. So the next morning, most of the New York and Boston devotees, because the New York devotees came up to Boston, of course to get Prabhupada's darshan, but also to get initiated because Prabhupada was giving second initiation at that time. And he gave the first Brahminical initiation to Kirtananda and Achyutananda in India. And then now it was Boston. This was the second one. So first, it was the Boston devotees one night, and then the next night it was the New York devotees. So Hamsaduta had offered to take everyone on his bus to visit the Commonwealth Pier. And that was the same site that Srila Prabhupada had come to on the Jaladuta. So that was the first place that he stopped off in 1965. So we all softly chanted our japa, our individual chanting on beads, and we headed downtown Boston on this really rickety bus. On the arrival, we walked around with Prabhupada as he pointed out one landmark after another among the factories and warehouses that he had visited when he initially arrived in the country. He pointed to an unalloyed steel big advertising sign. And he said, they have unalloyed steel and we have unalloyed devotion. Then he noticed the many buildings, some were being built up and some were being demolished. And he said, building and breaking, building and breaking. This is the material world. He said, but for us, we build with Krishna and we break with Maya. Then in the evening, Goursundara and Govinda would always accompany Srila Prabhupada to whatever, what do you call it, college engagements there were. Sometimes he would go to NYU, not NYU, Boston University, and forget the names of the other ones. But Prabhupada would give the lecture, and then the 2-minute bell would ring, before the students could go to the next class. So he was giving the lecture like, this body, which you are soaping so nicely, will turn into 3 things when you die. That is, it will turn into ashes if you're Christian, and stool if you're Parsi, because the Parsis throw the body on the ground and then dogs come and eat from it, and then it becomes the dog stool. Or it becomes ash if you're a Hindu and they burn the body. So he was trying to bring the students to be real students. And then when the 2-minute bell rang, then he started speaking so quickly about the Krishna conscious philosophy. And then there's Mahavishnu and Govardhakshai Vishnu, and they do the creation, and just like trying to get in everything there. Then at the end of the lecture, one of the students asked, how does Krishna consciousness relate to Advaita philosophy? Advaita philosophy is the idea of becoming one in all respects with God, that God is not impersonal, and you also lose your individuality. So Prabhupada said, Advaita philosophy means non-different from God. But don't feel shy to just tell me when to stop. Have you studied Advaita philosophy? So the boy nodded, adding, we are all like the sea, and although we are drops of water now, when we merge with the sea, we will become one with it. So Prabhupada said, the basic principle of Advaita philosophy is non-difference from God. That is a fact. We are not different from him. Just like the president of your country, he is American and you're American. So there's no difference. As far as American is concerned, you are non-different. But at the same time, you're not the president. Because you are American, it doesn't mean that you're on an equal level with the president. Is that not a fact? Similarly, we are qualitatively one with God, but not quantitatively. Then this is a very interesting addition. And I remember Goursundar, I'll just jump for a minute because Goursundar just came in my mind again, because he was always there for these Boston lectures. So for a while, Gurudev had Goursundar and Govinda Dasi be his personal servants and travel with him. But then he told me, he sent them to Hawaii, and he told me she was a very good servant, but it is not proper to be traveling with a lady. So that's when he sent, it was 1969, I believe. That's when he sent Goursundar and Govinda to open up the Hawaii temple. And it was just like a really old, battered nothing. And then they built it into a very, very beautiful temple with deities and the artwork. And Goursundar was always in a very preaching spirit. He gave very lovely scholarly lectures, and they always looked for opportunities to, because I was visiting them, that's how I know. When I was sick, Prabhupada sent me to Hawaii to be with them because of the, the beautiful ocean air and everything. So whenever I could, I went with Goursundar and Govinda to festivals. And there was a lot of, just like there are now, a lot of those hippie festivals. And somehow Goursundar would manage to get on stage, like with about 10 devotees. And there were thousands of people in the audience. So he always had that preaching spirit. So now going back to Boston, Prabhupada continued this analogy as an answer to the Advaita philosophy question. Because remember, the boy said, so we're all drops of water, and then when we go into the water, the ocean, then we become one with it. So Prabhupada said, water is being poured and water is being taken out by evaporation. This is a fact. From the seawater, the water is being evaporated, and the cloud again falls on the water. So water is not fixed up. This is eternally going on. You cannot stop this process. So don't think that once you've mixed with the seawater, that's going to be permanent, because the water is evaporating also. But if you become a big aquatic in the sea, then you'll go deep into the sea and you'll never have to come out. The Prabhupada's point was, if you become a servant with full faith of Krishna's supreme individuality and our servitor individuality, then you'll be in the spiritual world forever. Let's see. Oh yeah. So one evening, Prabhupada came into the temple with Goursundar and Govinda, and he was wearing what we all called his Swami hat. That saffron-colored cloth cap with a loose-fitting, sort of a square shape. Once you go to India, you see that everybody has it, but for us, it was very unusual. So he slowly walked up to it was a combined Vyasasana and an altar, because there was Prabhupada's seat there, and then below that, there were 2 or 3 steps, which had pictures of Krishna and various incarnations. There was Vasudev, Krishna's father, Krishna's not full father, but partial father, Vasudev, carrying baby Krishna across the Jamuna, to give Krishna to Mother Yasoda. And so Prabhupada bowed down with that Swami hat, he bowed down on the floor as usual. And then as he was getting up, because there were the 2 or 3 steps that had the various pictures on it, so he was on his hands and knees by that time. And we were also on our hands and knees because we were also getting up at the same time as Prabhupada. So then he stopped at that picture. Let's see. And in the middle of the river, because Vasudeva was carrying Krishna. And then in the middle of the river, Krishna slipped out of his hands and fell into the river. So Vasudeva was going crazy, looking in the water and looking for his son. So then in the picture that was there, the Indian print, you see a lady in a white flowing dress handing Krishna to Vasudeva. We never knew what that was, but now Prabhupada is telling the story. So then he said, so the Jamuna personified came up out of the water, holding Krishna and giving him back to Vasudeva and saying, here's your baby. I just wanted to play with him for a while. Oh, yes. And Goursundar and Govinda Dasi were, like, I was the first artist because I started painting for Prabhupada before he went to San Francisco. And then Goursundar and Govinda Dasi became his artist when he went to San Francisco. And Govinda Dasi told me that Goursundar used to read to her from the Srimad Bhagavatam. At that time we had only the first canto, but it was an amazing 3 volumes, as you all know. So he would read to her from the Srimad Bhagavatam while she was painting. And he gave her the same or similar paintings to copy for the temple walls. Oh, yes.
Oh.
And
one more, because then we have a beautiful display of pictures from Goursundar's life here in Alachua. I wish you were here. But so after this, you tell another anecdote that will be wonderful, and then we'll look at the pictures here.
what about, so Goursundar and Govinda Dasi were the second artist. And so Govinda Dasi did the paintings, but Goursundar and her also did pen and ink line drawings. And I remember Goursundar was, he was drawing Lord Chaitanya, but with some muscles. And Prabhupada told him, Lord Chaitanya is strong, of course, but he didn't need muscles. So Goursundar learned how to draw with Prabhupada's direct instructions. And then he and Govinda Dasi drew the first paintings for the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. One of them is when Rup and Sanatan first met Lord Chaitanya, and they're falling down like a rod in front of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan party. And the other one was Lord Chaitanya fainting in front of Lord Jagannath. So then the second printing of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada told us to make exact copies of Goursundar and Govinda's line drawings and turn them into paintings. So I guess, just one little more thing. So remember I told you that Prabhupada told Goursundar, don't ever think that you're too advanced to hear what your guru has to say. So then a few minutes later, Govinda Dasi began to walk out of the room. And so since she was in the middle of cooking, she had been going back and forth. between the darshan room and the kitchen. So Prabhupada called out to her, where are you going? She said, I'm going to get you something else. And then Prabhupada didn't have any prasadam in front of him. So I guess that I thought that he had taken prasadam before the darshan. But then Govinda dasi came in carrying a large dish of what was called fancy rice pudding. It's probably in one of the Hare Krishna recipe books, how to make that. Fancy rice pudding, and placed it on his desk. So Prabhupada was very pleased, and he took a spoonful, and then he said, this something else is better than all other.
Jodharani Prabhu, you must have muted yourself by mistake. So when you come back on, you were just talking about the fancy rice pudding. Not on yet.
Yes.
Okay.
So, so she brought him the fancy rice pudding, which I imagine because he liked it so much, I imagine that the recipe is in one of the Hare Krishna cookbooks. And then Prabhupada said, this something else is better than all other something else's. But you said that you wanted to show some pictures that he had on his walls in Alachua? I see everybody's muted here.
Okay. Damodar, who's our cameraman here, he's going to show some of the pictures that you just spoke of, because we have prints of the black and white illustrations they did for teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, and I just want to thank you so much for all this nectar. I can't imagine you and Goursundar, the early devotees that got to spend such intimate time with Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm remembering the past times, I'm thinking, am I making this all up? Because they're too out of this world, like for ordinary people to have gotten connection with. It's just, like you said, it's like unbelievable. It's unbelievable mercy.
Thanking you personally.
I want to thank you for visiting a few years ago, and I have a picture of you. Actually, it's up on one of the boards. It's not very good, but it was so wonderful when you came to see him. And you told him the Mridanga story, and he just kind of laughed. Yeah, right. But thank you so much for doing that. Haribo, and maybe I'll come visit you. I have your invitation.
It was an honor.
Video had the Boston scene, and you were telling how Srila Prabhupada told you about his first coming, and he was taking you on the shopping streets, but this isn't directly about Goursundar, but it's so relevant that there was a devotee, Charan Maharaj, who was preaching in this vicinity, and I happened to hear from him that on September 17th of 1965, he was serving in the Merchant Marines. He was 17 years old. His service at that day in the early morning was if any ship came in, that he should guide it where to park in the shipyard. And so this ship came in, he was a kid, and there were two people on the bow of the ship. One was the captain and the other was a saffron-clad Swami from India. It said Jaladuta Bombay. And so he thought, oh, a Swami from India. And so he did his job with nautical hand symbols, guiding the ship where to go. And Srila Prabhupada, with nautical hand symbols, thanked him. And 6 years later, he became a devotee. So I think that this pretty much concludes the speaking part of this program. We're thanking everybody who came to honor Goursundar and take care of Goursundar. Yeah, these last months. Do you want to speak?
Thank you all for everything, yesterday's ceremony, and just for the love and kindness everybody has shown us since we moved here 3.5 years ago. Amazing. So I can't describe it.
Thank you.
Sukadu wants to say.
This will be quick, but just, all the glorification. I think we all know that Gaya was such an incredible wife and devotee. And just everything she did, even the last, week and a half, to glorify her husband Goursundar, is so exemplary. Hopefully we can all follow in your footsteps, Gaya. Hare Krishna.
I would also like to thank Purana Rishi, who is over there, who has been coming over almost every night, every day, and at the end, when Goursundar couldn't get up off the floor, he said, "Call the little Swami." That's what he have him help you. So I want to thank Purana Rishi.
Yes. Oh, Gaya, she's asking about hearing the classes Goursundar gave. Didn't you just
I found, it's not this Zoom, but I found all of these recordings. Goursundar gave classes for about 10 years, and I'm figuring, Jiva Goswami is going to help me, because I started listening, and he was telling about the beginnings and the Bowery, and we had Giriraj, who was up there. I have him asking all these questions. Now, if I ask Goursundar anything, it's like, no, go look it up, right? But all these people that came, he would answer them and tell them the stories. So I am going to have a wealth of things, and we're thinking of putting up on YouTube. We just, so,
Okay.
I don't.
Oh, there's
No, but she's
Last time, we're putting Bernie up because
he couldn't have. No.
I don't know. We have to.
Gurudas could be possibly Gurudas. So I think that's it for this part of the program. Thank you, everybody. Jai Goursundar Prabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hadi.